Good morning, students. So we are in the fifth chapter now. There are different topics in this chapter. I'm going to deal with the first three topics because they are all related to each other. So we'll see all three topics in this class. Okay. So the name of the topic is health work and division of labor. So how people work in the health sector and what are the divisions of labor, who does what work and what is their responsibilities and role. Okay. So as a basic thing, first we are going to see about the family. Okay, family is something you have studied in the first year also, but because it says family in sociology, I'm just going to give a recap of what you studied in the first year. So family is a group based on marriage or common residence or emotional bonds and stipulation of domestic services. I said or, I didn't say and. So I hope you understood the difference. Family is a group based on marriage or common residence. Why I say this is, in Western countries people do not get married, they have a common residence, they live together, they live in. Or emotional bond, sometimes people do not even live together, they do not marry, but they have emotional bonds and they live as a family. And this could be even two men living together, two women living together, because some parts of the world even that is considered as family, though India has not gone to that level. In Western countries, two men living together, they can have children, two women living together, they can have children, and they are considered a family because of the emotional bonds that connect both of them. And stipulation of domestic services. So in the family, each person has a specific role to play. So this is the probably a detailed definition of family. Family can also be defined as a group based on marital relations, rights and duties of parenthood, common habitation, and reciprocal relations between parents and children. So this is more apt for the Indian society, where we say it's based on marital relationships, marriage. Then rights and duties of parents, what rights the parents have, what duties the parents have. Then common habitation, living together, and reciprocal relations between parents and children. So this is a bond which connects the Indian families together, the relationship between parents and children. Then some sociologists feel that family is just a social group where there is common residence, then there is economic cooperation and reproduction. So this is another definition which is self-explanatory, which I'm not going to explain because you would have studied this already. So let us see family as an institution. Again, you would have studied about institution in the first year. What are the different types of institutions, of which family is one of the institutions. The last line of the previous paragraph, if you see, the family is a social group characterized by common residence, economic cooperation and reproduction. So common residence, living together; economic cooperation, parents giving money to the children when the children are studying till they become independent. Then the children supporting the parents by giving money, that is economic cooperation between parents and children. And then reproduction, every family having children is the primary goal. Marriage, people start asking, do you have children? So that is our Indian culture. So that's the other aspect. So children, living together, and financial matters, these are the most important things of a family, which we'll be seeing in this chapter again and again. The focus is on children and the money and living together. Okay, so keep these three things in mind. So family as an institution, these are the three things which are very important, because people live together because they are related by blood, or because they are related by marriage, or because they are related by adoption. So people who don't have their own children, because in Indian culture children are very important to the family, so people prefer adoption if they do not have their own children. Whereas in Western countries, the family values have disintegrated, and people either live alone without a family, without a partner, or they live as husband and wife, or as couples without children. And very few families live as Indian families, husband, wife and children. So that is the Western culture. So let us see what is the institution of family all about. Here there are four things that are important in a family. The regulation of sexual relations. We already saw family the main aim is reproduction. But as an institution, there is a regulation on the sexual relations. Then economic survival is the second thing, control of reproduction and socializing of children. There is another topic on socialization, so we'll see what socializing of children is and how the family plays a major role in that. So as an institution, there are four roles that the family plays. It regulates sexual relations. If a father and mother have children, the father and mother control the child's sexual relations. They tell what to do, what not to do. Then the economic survival. As a family living together, there is better chance of economic survival. Then the family controls reproduction, because if you have 5 children, it's difficult to provide for 5 people, especially in today's scenario. If you want to educate 5 children, it takes a lot of effort. I'll just give an example. Today there is online class. I have 2 children and I have to provide 2 laptops for 2 of my children to study. Suppose I had 4 children, I have to provide 4 laptops. So the expense keeps increasing. So if you have to do the second thing, which is economic survival, then controlled reproduction is very important. And finally, the socialization of children is the important family responsibility. Okay, if you do not socialize children, then they will become antisocial. They will become growing to the wrong kind of people for this society. Okay, so these are the roles of a family as an institution. So what are the social functions of the family? The first thing is member replacement and physical maintenance. So that is, every family there is birth and death. So the grandparents, as they get older and older, they may die, and the children who are young, they get married, they have more children. So this happens in every society. So the older people die and the younger people give birth, and so the replacement happens in the society. And physical maintenance, that is, every person has to live, and that is another function of the family. People are given food, the daily functions of our family runs, that is the physical maintenance. Then regulation of sexual behavior, this I have already explained in the first line. So each child will have different behavior, and some of it is wrong sexual behavior, some wrong attitudes. So the family actually regulates it. Sometimes when the family is unable to control a child, that's when they go and do wrong things like rape. But the family has a main purpose to regulate the sexual behavior from the young age. If a male child is told to respect the female child, then they will behave in a responsible way. In Indian culture, women are considered as gods. Okay, women are given a lot of importance, but at the same time, in the same Indian culture, women are also treated as sex objects. So there is a little indifference because of the way children are brought up. So regulation of sexual behavior is one very important function of the family. The third thing is the socialization of children. So children have to be socialized, that is, they have to be given proper responsibility, they have to be taught how to behave, in which situation what to behave. The old culture has to be taught to the children. If you listen to your parents and grandparents, they will tell you how their lives was and how different your life is. So that is a change. Because of the society changing, your life is also changing. But in spite of that, the culture has to be passed on from the parents to the children, and that will help in socialization. Okay, this is a responsibility of the family. The family has to teach socialization to the children. Then the economic activity, the income expenditure, the production and consumption, how the food is brought to the family. Okay, ultimately, why do you earn money? To eat good food, to live comfortably. So economic activity in the family, people go and work to earn money so that the family can have enough food, enough comfort in living, and enough education. So the responsibility of the parents is to provide all this, and that is the economic activity. Then the social emotional support, this is another important factor. See, after you all live together and provide for each other, what is the ultimate thing? When you are sad, it is your own family members who come and comfort you. Your neighbor does not come and they may come and tell you, oh, are you sad, are you unhappy, I will try to help you. But who is the people who stay with you and comfort you for a long time? It's the family. So this is the most important aspect of the function of this family, which is social and emotional support right from a child. When a child is small, the parents and the grandparents provide social emotional support. When the child grows, the brothers and sisters provide emotional support along with the parents. As the child becomes an adult, the child himself who is now an adult, he provides social and emotional support to his parents and to his children. And as he becomes older, it is a reciprocal relationship. The old person now provides social emotional support to the child, and the child to the old person. So this is how the family runs, and these are the social functions of the family. Okay, I hope you understood about the family. It is just a recap of what you studied already. So next topic we go as the family and of NGO socialization. Okay, so here we are going to study about socialization. What is socialization, and what is the relationship between the family and the NGO in socialization? Okay, socialization is a fundamental process through which family acquires cultural and personal identity. So socialization is the process of mixing with the other people in the society. Man is a social animal. Man cannot live alone, and so if you cannot live alone, and if you are a social animal, you have to go and talk with people and mix with people. That is called socialization. Okay, and when you talk with people and mix with people, which people will you go and talk to? You don't go and talk to people living in America and Africa. You talk to people within your own culture, within your society. So that is how your culture develops and your family gets a personal identity. Okay, so each person undergoes this process of socialization. Some people have positive effects, some people have negative effects. If, for example, a child grows in a family where the father is a drunkard, mother is a sex worker, for example, just imagine how the child will grow. He will have negative influence, and he will grow into a negative personality because of the wrong type of socialization. Whereas if the father is a doctor, mother is a housewife, and they are bringing up the child with a lot of love and affection, the child will grow up into a positive person with a lot of positive socialization. So that is how the family plays a role in the socialization of children. And that child, when he grows up, he will provide the same kind of love to the other children in the family. So for example, one example you can say is, if you read about Hitler, you will see that as a child, he underwent a lot of stress and struggles, and that is why he went on to have a negative personality, and he killed so many Jewish people and other people. So a negative influence carries on to the life of the person. So the family plays a very important role in the socialization of children. So we already studied about families. There are different types of families: single parent, nuclear, or extended or joint family. So each person has a specific role to play in the socialization of the child. So the society is dynamic. It is not static. Things keep changing. The next topic will be about social change in the family. So when things keep changing, the child also has to be given freedom to involve in all these activities, and that is how the child socializes in each society. Okay, and the child is the focus of the socialization process, because the child, when he learns the right type of socialization, when he becomes an adult, he will have the same thing in his mind, and he will act in the same way, he will socialize in the same way, and so it is carried on from one generation to another. When there is negative socialization, the NGOs play a role. I already told about an example of a drunk father and a sex worker mother. So the child is affected. So what happens? The NGOs work with such children. They work with children who are affected. So the NGOs give a lot of identity. They give social roles and values to the child. In Western countries, for example, in US, UK, developed countries, even if a child is beaten by the parents, the child is taken away and given to foster parents. And there are child support people. That is, there are social workers who go and visit these children every now and then to see if they are given freedom and they are brought up in the proper way. In India, we have not gone to that level. The family is given more responsibility. So the NGOs actually work mainly to ensure that the child has happiness, the child is not abused, and the child has good positive influence. Okay, so if there is any negative influence, then NGOs or non-governmental organizations work with such children. Okay, so parents are the people who have to ensure that the children do not deviate from the normal social behavior. If they deviate, then the parents should control the child and ensure that the child is brought back to the normal socialization. But if these parents do not have the strength, or if their parents are not available, if the child has no parents, or if the parents are drunkards, then who takes up the role? The NGOs take up the role in providing this socialization, right type of socialization for these children. Okay, other than working with children, NGOs also work with whole families. Okay, so how do the NGOs work with whole families? There are government organizations and they provide certain things. Like in India, for example, the government provides ration shops, food in the ration shops, and there is Amma Unavagam where food is given. So all these are government things. But in spite of this, there are other needs in the families which the government may not be able to provide. For example, there is social service which the NGOs provide. Poverty, there is insecurity. So even in the case of I can give an example of leprosy affected person. So Karigiri works with leprosy affected people. Not only leprosy affected people, but we also provide education for the children of leprosy affected people. You know, if a person is identified as leprosy, their child is also stigmatized. They are not given proper education, they are not able to go to the good schools. So leprosy organizations provide books, fees, and school admission for the children of people affected by leprosy. Same way, NGOs like Karigiri also work with disadvantaged people, people who are poor. So we give some free treatment to poor people. We also provide education, we provide other help to the poor people. So there are NGOs who are involved in various kind of social activities for individuals and families who are affected by disease, who are affected by poverty, who are affected by insecurity, and who are affected by wrong things like people who are addicted to smoking, drinking, drug addiction, people who are into sexual activities. So all their children are also, and the family itself is taken up by NGOs and they are rehabilitated. So this is how the NGOs work with families and their socialization. Okay, so next we'll see how social change and the family is. Okay, you would have studied about social change in the last year. So how does social change affect the family? Society is not static, it is dynamic, it keeps changing. In society, we cannot live the same way we lived 100 years back or even 50 years back. You know, when your parents were born, they never had cell phones, they never had laptops, no computers. But today, you all have cell phones, laptops, and computers. And your parents have also learned to use the cell phones and laptops. So, that is the change in the society. So always there is continuous change. The main change which happens is the social and economic change. Okay, so change happens in the society and change happens in the economy. So how much income you earn. For example, I keep asking my grandmother, when she was alive, I used to ask her how much she used to buy a kilo of fish for. She'll say 10 pice. Today, how much you get a kilo of fish? It is from 150 rupees to 1000 rupees depending on the type of fish. So where is 10 pice, where is 1000 rupees? So that is the change, economic change. So can you go and buy fish for 10 pice today? People will laugh at you, because the economy has changed in such a way that people are earning more, they are spending more, so the expenses also increased. So this change happens all the time. So when you guys become old, when you are 60 years old, you know how much you will be paying for a kilo of fish? You will be paying 5000 rupees for a kilo of fish. But your income will also change. If your father and mother is earning 20,000 per month, you will be earning 1 lakh per month. So that is the economic change. So society and economy never is static, it is always dynamic, it keeps changing. So the family also has to keep pace with this change. The family cannot say, I will be the same, I will buy fish only for 10 pice. You cannot tell like that. You have to keep changing as per the society and economy changes. So how does this change in the society and economy happen? It happens because of the following things, that is industrialization, urbanization, educational expansion, demographic change, and monetization. Okay, so how does industrialization and urbanization make a change? For example, if you go to Mumbai, if your family is spending 10,000 rupees per month in Vellore for living expenses, in Mumbai with 10,000 you can only get a house, one room house for the whole family. You cannot even eat. In Mumbai, to eat a normal food in a one room family, you will need at least 50 to 60,000 rupees. So that is the change of urbanization. In urban areas, the cost of living is very high. The industrialization is high. For example, in Chennai, what is the cost of school fees? The donation itself you have to pay 2 lakhs. In Vellore, we have not come to that level. In a village, it will still be less. So this transformation in and the social and economic change is because of industrialization, urbanization, educational expansion, demographic change, and monetization. Okay, so the following things you have to keep in mind, because they are very important. That's why I put it in bold. The primary diamond, we are talking about social and economic change. So the most important things which cause this social and economic change are the educational expansion, growth of employment outside of the family, income growth, and urbanization. So we'll be studying each of this in detail to see how these aspects have brought about social and economic change. So first thing we'll take up is education. How has this brought about social and economic change? Simply saying, more education means you have more skills and more knowledge. So compared to your previous generation, compared to your parents, if you have studied more, if you have studied in good schools, good colleges, then you get more knowledge, you get more skills, you are able to do different kind of work. So your level of idea is also more, your mental makeup is also more. So you are able to take up a lot of responsibilities. So what happens when you are more educated than your parents, then slowly over a period, when you are a small child, your parents will always give you instructions. You only followed the instructions, you never gave instructions. But as you became educated and more knowledgeable than your parents, slowly they will listen to you when you give advice. Okay. So I am sure that happens in your family. When you were children, you listen to your parents never listen to you. Now as you grow older, your parents will listen to you and they will give you more responsibility in the house. So that is how education changes families. Okay, and it changes the responsibility from parents to children. The next is non-family employment. So in this, what we are trying to say is, olden days the children used to live with the family. Almost everybody were farmers, so the child used to go to farm along with the parents, and he also used to become a farmer. Same way, a person who stitches clothes, a tailor, the child will also become a tailor. A father who is a priest in the temple, the child will also become a priest in the temple. So this was how families were living throughout the world. So the whatever job the parent was doing, the child will do. But now it has changed. With the education, the children go to urban areas, they leave the families, so they do not follow the traditional family employment. So they go to different places, especially to urban areas, to cities, to do their work. So this is non-family employment, and because of this there is a lot of social and economic change. It increases the number of people in the cities, it increases the cost of living, and it also changes the type of work people do in the society. Okay, the next thing is urbanization and migration. So it is very much related to the education and the previous one, which is non-family employment. When people are educated, they do not do the traditional jobs that their parents were doing, so they go and work in industries so that they will be able to earn more money. So that leads to urbanization and migration. Okay, we saw during the coronavirus that millions of people from Bihar and Uttar Pradesh have come to South India, to Bangalore, Chennai, Tirupur, to work. Why do they come here? Because their village, they do not get enough income, their villages are not industrialized, so they go and work in Bangalore, Tirupur, where there is a lot of bunian companies, so they are able to earn a lot of money in industries. So this is an apt example for urbanization and migration. These are uneducated migrants, but there are people who get educated in cities, and they go for jobs in cities. From villages they go to the cities to study, and they work in cities. So that is another aspect of urbanization and migration. So when this happens, there is a change in the income levels. For example, in a village you will be able to earn 100 rupees if you do a full day's work, or 500 rupees. In the city you will be able to earn double that amount. Okay, that is why a lot of people prefer to go to the cities. And as children go to the cities, either the parents go and live with the children in the city, or the parents live in their own traditional houses and the children send money to the parents. And when this happens, the economy changes. The village economy improves because the children are sending money from the city to the village. And when parents go from the cities to live with the children, and the parents move from the villages to go to the cities to live with their own children, then it means that the villages become empty and urbanization increases. So this is how the wage incomes plays a role in the social and economic change. Finally, we come to mate selection and marriage. So because of all the above things, there is increase in wages, there is urbanization, there is higher level of education. Because of all these changes that are happening in the society, every generation, for example your parents, what did they, how educated they were, why do they put you in a professional college? So each generation, people want their children to study more. So when this happens, the society keeps changing, and so the youngsters who are able to earn and work more, they have more freedom in selecting their marriage partner or life partner or their family partner. Okay, so when children have more income, when they are able to live and independently of their parents' income, they have more freedom to select their partner. So those days, 50 years back, you would have heard your grandparents telling you, I never even saw my husband before I got married. My parents told me to get married to him, so I got married. This is a common dialogue that we have seen. But these days, children want to get to know the spouse before they get married. They want to talk to the person, go out with the person, and there are a lot of people who even live in with the person. Okay, so in cities you see there is a lot of premarital sex and pregnancy before marriage. So this is how the mate selection and marriage and family values have changed in the society. That is also because of social change and economic change. In fact, this change is quite dramatic. In Western countries, it is still more high. In India, in cities it has already started, and soon it will spread all over the country because our country is becoming more westernized, and that is why mate selection in marriage plays an important role in social change and urbanization. So in spite of that, secularization, that is religious freedom, plays an important role in family in the Asian scenario, especially in India. Because we have religious freedom, the Western technology and economy is not very rapidly changing. Though I know it's rapidly changing, but it is not penetrated too much. So there are still some family values left in India, but as Western technology and economic organization, they cause so much of changes in India. Soon India is likely to become like that, but in spite of that, the intergenerational relations between young people. What does intergenerational relations means? The relationships between this generation of people and the previous generation of people. It has created a lot of independence for the youngsters, and mainly because of the westernization of our culture. But at the same time, our family values, because of our religious values in our country, has prevented extreme penetration of westernization within the country. I hope you understood. What I'm trying to say is, India is slowly changing towards the western ways, but because of our religious and family values, we have not changed drastically, but we have only changed dramatically. That is, drastic change means fast change, dramatic change means a sudden different kind of change. So drastic change has not happened, but dramatic change has happened in mate selection and marriage. I hope you understood these three topics. We'll go on to the next topics in the next class. Thank you.